Shall we start, sir? Close to 200 logged in.
Okay.
Good morning to all of you, and good morning to you, sir, for having and thanks for having accepted our invitation to speak to the construction professionals across all the states. In fact, it is going to be very informative. So we have a speaker who is really passionate about his subject, the green building movement. So we have Padma Shri Dr. G.SHANKAR, who would be talking to us. And I believe there is no other person who can talk about green building with such authority, as he has done a lot of work in this area. He is a pioneer of a people's housing movement based on cost-effective and sustainable building technologies in India. He did his architecture studies from College of Engineering, Trivandrum, and later did MS from Birmingham School of Architecture, UK, and postgraduate diploma in journalism. His concept of green architecture has brought about a much required qualitative change to the shelter sector in Kerala. Not only in Kerala, you can see that he has done maximum number of buildings, in fact, across the world, as far as the green building is concerned. So he's the founder and chief architect of Habitat Technology Group, an NGO working in the shelter sector in South Asia with corresponding sectors in India and in other developing countries like Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Nigeria. He has been awarded the 2011 Padma Shri by Government of India. Indeed, we are very privileged to have you, sir. And apart from this, he had D.Litt from University of Asia, MS from Birmingham School of Architecture. In fact, he is a combination of both national as well as international exposure, which by itself speaks volumes. And he has been involved with number of UN projects also. He is the chairman of the National Committee to frame disaster mitigation design specification for Government of India, and a number of this thing both in India as well as abroad also. Mission chief of Nepal disaster mitigation and chairman task force on housing state planning board, Government of Kerala, international director architecture frontiers in Paris in France. So with his national and international experience, I am sure that this talk on sustainable housing at the time of COVID would be a great insight to all of us. And we at Ramco Cement, sir, are privileged to have you. We have been, in fact, hosting number of webinars, and sustainability is at the core of our operations as well, because even with cement and concrete, we have been able to achieve number of initiatives as far as the area of sustainability, green buildings is concerned. We are taking all possible measures. So in fact, as an organization, this topic is also dear to our heart. So with those few words, I invite Padma Shri Dr. G.SHANKAR to share his valuable inputs with all of us, and give us a lot of insights. I'm just stopping this presentation, and over to you, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much for the glorious words of introduction. I've been actually watching company Ramco Cements for the last probably a decade and a half. I normally don't take up this invitation unless I'm convinced about company, especially about the greenness of the project. I'm fully convinced that Ramco is really going green sensitive on their products, and that is why I took up this invitation. Let me tell you that. Normally, there's always a gap between the word and the deed. The people claim that they're doing a lot of green things, but they don't mean it. In fact, the webinar series that is going on now, I've been actually an intense listener to many of these topics, and I had the privilege of listening to one on cements, and actually that gave me a new vista of thinking. I mean, talking about the clingers, talk about the blends that you use, and how eco-sensitive these interventions are. Eventually, as an architect, I have my parameters of selecting materials and technologies. One of the parameters that I use, mandatory parameters that I use, is the greenness of the project. If the project is not eco-sensitive, I don't touch it. I've been shaping this my career, the organization, on a value system, which is very precious to me. So thank you very much, Ramco. I mean, it had been a great learning experience for me. COVID times actually brings you unexpected benefits, Benefits in the sense, it gives you time to not only relaxation, time for introspection. You sit back and meditate. You sit back and think about your organization, the way you work. Think about the need of creative thinking, which is sadly missing in Indian paradigm. Unless you're creative, unless you're tagged down to something, I don't think it's a very competitive world, and you need to excel yourself. Whatever you do, you need to excel yourself. And the students, the engineers out there, let me tell you this. I mean, this is the time to probably look back, meditate, and reinforce your faith. This is the time to read. This is the time to listen to things. Enlarge the horizons of knowledge so that you can face the new world. We're all waiting for that to happen. I can tell you with such conviction because I've been working with disasters all my life. For the last 30 years, I've been working disaster situations. So this particular disaster doesn't hit me very hard because I've waded through seas of miseries, oceans of despair. I've seen across the world, like the last disaster was in Haiti, in Central Americas. Everywhere, wherever I go, I had the great privilege of working in almost all the disaster sites in India, right from Gujarat to Uttarakhand to Latur to, Odisha to Tamil Nadu to Andhra Pradesh. I had the great Uttaranchal and a place like the Uttarakhand. I had the great privilege of working with the government, central government and international development agencies, holding hands with people. That is the crux of this thing. So we are going through COVID times. You are stressed. As a professional, I am stressed because I don't know what, I am very, very, very clear about the challenges that you are facing. I don't want to dwell on that. I don't want to look at the negative side of it. I mean, we are all tense in many ways because we really don't know what's going to happen. As a professional, I'm really tensed up, little stressed because we need numbers, we need more projects. But one thing exciting that's going to happen, I should assure you, and this is my prediction to you. 30 years of professional this thing. Let me tell you this: world is going to change in a different direction, and you have to brace yourself to face the challenge. New materials are going to flood the market. Probably new technologies, including prefab technologies, are going to. I think in the coming days, it's going to be do-it-yourself kind of technologies. Probably you have to manage that, and probably RMC, prefab cement components, roofing components, rolling components, where you buy it in a cart and get your site and screw it yourself, kind of thing. You get it fixed. All these. This is going to come very soon, and that probably is the challenge before us during. But having said that, to me, as a practitioner of green architecture, green engineering, sustainability is going to be the key word. People, when you look at the social media, the visual media across the world, people are actually coming to that. Talking about clear skies from Jalandhar, you can see the beautiful landscape of Himalayas. The new mountainscapes are coming. Wild animals are beginning to get out of main national highways. As a green activist, let me tell you that it's music to me. Really music to me. I wanted to see this air pollution getting reduced and things like that. So these are critical issues probably that we'll have to face in terms of sustainability. But let me tell you, with such conviction that disasters will bring you opportunities. Let's brace ourselves for that. My favorite author, Paulo Coelho, always talks about magical moments, passing by. If you can identify that magical moment, I'm telling you, my dear friends, that magical moment is just around the corner. You have to take that moment, jump into the bandwagon of sustainability, and then the world will be yours. I've had many experiences, personal experiences, trying to look at sustainability. For instance, I had been telling you that I work in disaster areas all my life. And one of the experiences still remain very green in me. I've done the largest rehabilitation work in the world, talking about 95,000 houses in Sri Lanka alone. You know, in the northwestern and northeastern province of Sri Lanka, Jaffna, Betikola, Trincomalee, all these areas, I built 95,000 houses just after the tsunami, you know, looking at disaster mitigation and solution. And you know, as a part of Indian, you know, contingent, I was given a diplomatic passport, and I had the diplomatic immunity. If you know about that, and I had the diplomatic immunity where I was led to these difficult positions. You know, as an architect, I don't design anything without seeing the site and without seeing the beneficiary and without holding hands with them. I don't do it. Whatever I do, I hold hands with people for whom I'm building. You know, this particular population was not a strange population to me, but I wanted to know more about their lifestyle, the landscape, you know, all the things pertaining to green architecture. So I was led to one place, you know, they called it in Tamil, they called it Poondotam. Poondotam in any language means a veritable garden, you know, a flower garden. And I was seeing only, you know, destructive, I mean, everywhere, you know, civil war had left very indelible marks on the landscape, on the cityscape, on the buildings. Everything was crumbling down. It is a barren landscape. And I was taken to one place called Pundotam. Pundotam. I wanted to see a happy community. I've been seeing unhappy people, you know, people have lost their companions, people have lost their children in the civil war. So, I mean, I thought it was a great opportunity, 95,000 houses. And the numbers didn't amaze me, but I wanted to make a very meaningful interventions, you know. Disaster, when disaster happens, you lose something which cannot be compensated. I'm telling you, which cannot be compensated. And you need immediate reaction to that. I mean, if you want to build houses, do it immediately with whatever little local material, local expertise, local capabilities. You start building and giving back a life to them, you know. House becomes a life in disaster situations. Let me tell you that. House becomes a life and a livelihood kind of things, you know, in times of disaster. So I was going there, talking to people. Normally when I go and talk to the community, I don't sit in a chair and talk to them. You know, I sit on the floor with them. You know, if you're always talking about thousands of people coming to, I can't speak the language. I can't speak Tamil fluently, you know. And I had a person to translate these things to Tamil. The people came in numbers, 15,000 people came. It was a Maidan kind of a thing. It was raining. It was all slush and mud there. And they sat down, you know, because they thought I'm the person who was going to deliver. It's not me. It was Government of India and some international development agencies were going to give the money. But they thought it was me, you know. They took me as a God's representative. And they all came. And, you know, they had hope in their eyes, you know. But then, you know, suddenly I began talking to them in my language. The translator was there. He was translating in Tamil. The question answer session was going to happen. You know, I take their requirements, you know, the metaphysical requirements. It's not the physical requirements. You need, when you talk about sustainability, this thing, you tell them what sustainability can mean to your house, what benefits it brings to your, you know, livelihood, what brings it to your life, you know, what additional benefits that you get. If you have actually, if they, especially the poorer section society, if you tell them the truth, they will take it without any questions, you know. That's been my experience all through my life. So, but, you know, the government people came in and they said, it's a government-to-government dialogue and you don't have to talk to these communities. I said, unless I know the communities, unless I talk to them, I won't be able to listen. If I'm not able to listen to them, then how can I build my house? A small conversation, kind of a dialogue happened and I was asked to leave, you know. As I was leaving, the military people came in numbers and I was asked to leave. As I was, you know, the meeting was getting this, but a young girl came to me. And normally, you know, I don't wear this kind of, I have a longer kind of a, we call it, what do you call it? Kurta? I mean, kurta kind of a thing.
Yes,
kurta, long shirt and, you know, this girl in a plated, you know, typical Tamil, this thing, we are not seeing it this thing, she came to me and tucked at this thing, you know, it's a Tamil population, basically Tamil population who got affected in the civil war. She tucked at me and gave me a bit of chocolate, you know, one small this thing, and gave me a small garland, you know, jasmine garland. which was obviously, taken from some deity's photo, is a bit of garland, and she wanted this garland to be given to my wife. She could, I mean, very young, probably 4 or 5. She didn't know that my wife is in Kerala, Trivandrum, and I was speaking to her in Sri Lanka, I mean, too young to realize that. And but I knew that she had something to tell me. And I wanted to give something back to her, but I didn't have anything with me, This girl was there full of hope, and she wanted to tell me something. And this was a kind of bribe, offered to me. And I asked her, I mean, why did you give this jasmine garland to me, a bit of jasmine garland to me? You wanted something, you want to convey something. I mean, tell me, what is it that you want? She told me in her language that she had some dolls, given by some relatives, some dolls. She was probably born in a shack. Temporary rehabilitation sheds that the government gives, they actually reek of filth, they reek of dirt, they reek of no toilets, no place to live. It's a kind of rehabilitation shed that was given by the government, Sri Lanka. And I went in and, and this girl wanted a safe and secure place for keeping her dolls. I said, why? She said, I don't have a proper place because my friends out there are taking away all this and they are not returning it. Uncle, when you build my house, I wanted a safe and secure place to keep these dolls, When you listen to these, but she couldn't complete the sentence, the military people came in and dragged her out, I couldn't actually look back, but my granddaughter's age, and you see, there are a lot of people out there. Let me tell you that. When you talk about sustainable housing, you should also talk about the numbers that we have. We have more than, let me tell you, because I'm very sure about the statistics. It is based on very relevant statistics. I'm telling you, there are 60 million families. You don't have adequate housing. Let me tell you that again. There are 60 million families without adequate housing, They're around us. And we are talking about 1,200 million people living in this country. And out of that, 60 million people don't have proper houses. How do you define that? How do you define adequate housing? I had a great opportunity to represent India in 2 of the UN conferences that actually dwelt about habitat issues. Habitat 2 and Habitat 3. Habitat 2 happened in Istanbul, and Habitat 3 happened 2 years back at Quito, Ecuador, where the world came together to discuss problems and one of the agendas that emerged out of Habitat 2, just held in 1996 in Istanbul, was talking about adequate housing and human habitats in a sustainable way, things like that. Urbanization is happening. And how do you face the challenges of urbanization? Talk about green architecture, green housing. In the times of urbanization, rapid urbanization, how do you face it? And the definition for adequate housing actually dealt with 2 critical issues, which we don't really take care in, especially when you give small houses. Access to a clean cooking space and access to a clean toilet are 2 mandatory things. Let me tell you that access to clean cooking space and access to a clean toilet are mandatory things if we are talking about adequate housing. It's not that we give a house. It should have clean cooking space and a clean toilet, mandatory. It's a world mandate now to dwell on that. And then talking about urbanization, the pace and intensity of urbanization is staggering. Let me tell you, it's staggering. It's sad because the rate of urbanization is much more in third world countries, much more in Latin America, Central America, parts of Asia, parts of Europe, the eastern part of Europe. People are actually reeling under the impact of urbanization. Urbanization, when you really look at it, it's a promise. Because why do people come to urban centers in terms of, you should be attracted to urban facilities, livelihood, health facilities, education. You want your child to grow in a better way, and you want to get a better employment opportunity, urban centers offer all that thing. And urban centers will remain, it cannot be wished away. Let me tell you, whatever you do, urbanization is going to intensify in the coming years. And by 2050, 2060, which is hardly 40 years away, the whole world probably is going to be an urbanized area. In India, you know, from 50 to 80 is going to happen in 50% urbanization to 80% urbanization is going to happen probably in 10 to 15 years from now. 10 to 15 years, 80% of the Indian subcontinent is going to be urbanized. But urbanization actually, when you look at it, brings in a very important criteria for you to start discussing about engineering system architecture. Three diverse phenomena that are happening. One is poverty on one side, one is environment at one side, and develop. We all want development. These three seemingly different terms. Poverty on one side, development on the other side, and environment the third side. See, everywhere when you look at it, in the name of development, is the environment which gets very badly mutilated, compromised. That cannot be done. We should have a kind of linkage. We should have a kind of connectivity. We should have some very meaningful bridges between these things. Poverty cannot be wished away, but poverty actually is a catalyst. It urges you to dream about a better world. Poverty can be a big catalyst. Look at it as a positive this thing. You know, we call in India, we call all these settlements as slums. But in South America, go to Chile, go to Brazil, go to Argentina, they call it favelas. Favelas are not islands of misery. They are islands of hope. They are islands of promise. You know, they're islands of happiness, you know, because, I mean, when you really look at the dynamics of urbanization, it is these people who sustain urbanization, the positives of urbanization. You know, how to synchronize these things is a big agenda, which we call as a brown agenda. Having said that, I mean, people like me have been, you know, I've been kind of upholding the virtues of green engineering, sustainable engineering, green architecture, green ways of living for a long time now. You know, we have been fighting for that. And we are the people who brought in Indian standards to green certification, you know. Graha was actually, I mean, you know, we had only Leeds a few years back. And Indian Green Building Council was there. Now we have Graha, which is more localized, more contextual, which talks about local parameters, very important in Indian context, you know. We need green housing, we need green architecture, we need green engineering, we need green, because we are losing options. Let me tell you that we are losing options. And people have been endlessly asking me, wherever I go to Sweden, where I go to Norway, people have been asking me the same question. You know, what is the linkage between building industry and, you know, green protocols? Let me put my heads down in shame and tell you a startling revelation. We, as a fraternity, civil engineers and architects who are responsible for the built-up environment in this world. Let me tell you this, reiterate my statement. We are responsible, as we are responsible for the built-up environment. We are engineers and architects are basically responsible for the built-up environment. We build bridges, we build dams, we build buildings, we build everything that man is building. You know, the built-up environment, you know, contains all these parameters. So as people responsible to the world, to the built-up environment, we are responsible, primarily responsible for, we are not the only stakeholders, we are primarily responsible for climate change. How do you, can I qualify that statement a little bit further? I'll just talk about one thing. Water everywhere, but not to draw a drink is the present situation. In Kerala, let me go very contextual, Kerala, local situation. Kerala, we have 44 rivers, and all the 44 rivers are on deathbeds, certain deathbeds. All the rivers are dying. It's not the case in Kerala. Elsewhere in the country, go to Telangana, go to Godavari, Kaveri, Mahanadi, Krishna. I mean, everything is suffering a kind of water is drying up, climate is changing. And what makes the climate change is it is the To me, unsustainable practices in building construction that causes this thing. In terms of energy inputs, in terms of carbon dioxide emissions, in terms of ozone depletion. You see, 32% of the wood harvest in India, let me tell you that, goes for residential building construction. We need trees. Trees probably is the only answer for climate change. I don't want to qualify that because shortage of time, but let me tell you that we need trees. We need water. We need to look at water usage in our houses. You know, we are actually using, let me tell you another startling this thing. People out there should actually internalize the pain of it. You should be angry about it. The architects and engineers, students out there should be angry about it. 5 billion liters a day. Let me tell you that. Let me qualify that statement again. 5 billion liters a day is being used in our toilet to flush out the dirt. Water everywhere, but not a drop to drink is the Indian situation. And we are using 5 billion liters of probably potable water quality, you know, which people can drink. That kind of water is being used to flush out the dirt from a toilet. 5 billion liters a day, which should really pain you, make you angry about it. This is the kind of practices which is there in the present domain. How do you react to that? How do you react to this thing? What is this thing? There is no other way out, my dear friends. The only way to look at sustainability is to look at 3 basic parameters. 3 things. What are the 3? One is in Indian context, third world context. I don't want to go beyond that because this is my domain, you know. Third world country, we have to look at cost efficiency as the primary thing. I mean, I've been promoting some of them, you know, initially, which are not cost efficient. See, for a common man to buy the technology, a common man to use the technology, it has to be cost efficient because we don't have much money to spend on this. That's one thing. Second thing, which is very critical, is the eco-sensitivity. Eco-sensitivity has to become a mandatory parameter. Let me tell you, in Kerala, I'll just tell you about an architectural intervention, which is actually why Shankarji is always talking about eco-sensitivity is because of one reason. You know, eco-sensitivity means when you're building a small house, probably in a 5 cents land, when you're building a house, respect the profile of the land. An architect or engineer don't have, I'm telling you, God has not given you the mandate to manipulate the terrain. If you manipulate the terrain, if you make it flat, if you bring down the mountains to make it flat, if you actually fill up the paddy fields, calamity is in store. I'm telling you, calamity will be in front of you. In Kerala, we thought we are insulated. We thought we are completely insulated from disaster. But 2018, when floods came in, the entire state got submerged. Why did the state get submerged? You know, people were building houses, mansions, Riverview Valley, you know, Riverview houses, Lakeview houses into the lake. Forget about the basic thing. They were building it into the lake. And they were, I mean, Kerala has 3 different geographical profiles. You know, we have mountains, we have plain lands, we have a long coastal line. And architects are always used to respect that. You know, earlier, look at traditional architecture. You know, there's a doyen of architecture, a doyen of my forefather, whom I respect as my guru, you know, Frank Lloyd Wright. He is an American architect who built stunning buildings like Guggenheim Museum, Falling Waters in America, an American architect. He's the proponent of organic architecture. He used to tell us, the students of architecture, that, you know, you should respect the dictates of the land. If you, it should not be on a mountain. A building should not be on a mountain. The building should be off a mountain. It makes a difference. A building should not be on a mountain. It should be off a mountain. So you don't have the mandate to manipulate land. You, for an architect, you know, when I get such land on a mountain, I take it as a challenge. Without, you know, changing the profile of the land, how can you face the challenge? I mean, I can't give you ready-made answers, but it's a concern. for the mother nature. That will give you wonderful, wonderful, whatever questions you ask me, wonderful, wonderful this thing. If you have to build on this thing, take it as challenge. And architects, engineers will have 101 solutions to that. Land, I think, is God-given. And human beings don't have this thing. So like that, when I say eco-sensitivity, in India, relatively, I go to Norway. When I go and teach there, I wait for the sun to appear. Because as you know, it's a land of midnight sun, it comes in at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon and goes off at, the sun, it's not the bright sun that we get in, this part of the world. When you look at the sun, you are talking about a kind of a moon kind of a thing, object there, It looks so cold. It's not bright, hot, radiant as our sun, So, we are blessed. In India, we are blessed to have such bright, beautiful sun. We are blessed to have wind in. And primary parameter of the kind of building that we should do is an attitude. Get in the light, natural light. Get in as much of natural light as possible. Our climate, we are still, except in the northern region, where Himalayas, we have a very moderate climate. Even our winter is kind of tolerable. Except in Leh Ladakh or Himalayan areas. Otherwise, especially when you come to the south part of it, it's really bearable. So I have windows to open out, get the wind in, talk about cross ventilation, get the natural light in. This is what I call as eco-sensitivity, without having to use energy eating devices, electrical devices, things like that, for lighting, for ventilation, get the wind in. You call the wind in. For an architect, it's a delight. When you orient a building, you can call the wind in and it will come in. I'm telling you, if you really know the leeward side and the windward side, we design the buildings properly, looking at the sun shades, where the west is, we can have shading devices more there, plant a few trees to cut off the excessive heat that comes in the evening sun. You can develop some wonderful, meaningful buildings. This is a very, very, very simple way of looking. I don't want to give you very complicated this thing, but this is also the time to look at it. Let me tell you this. When you have to choose materials, there are 4 or 5 things that you should be able to look at. Some of the parameters, I'll just reveal some of the parameters with which I select my vocabulary of building materials and technology. One of the basic vocabulary, like I said, I look at cost efficiency, I look at energy efficiency, and I look at eco-sensitivity. These are my primary parameters. But beyond that, beyond these primary parameters, what are the other things that you can look at? One of the things should be to encourage local capabilities. Look at local solutions. Because if we really look at other things, look at the West for answers, that's not going to happen in India. Because most of the places, if architects are listening, my times are all getting up, probably a few years from now, we'll be all leaving. But the youngsters out there, young engineers and architects out there, let me tell you this thing. You are not going to build anything probably in the urban areas. Rural areas are no longer going to be there. And where are you going to build? You are not going to build in rural areas. You are not going to build in urban areas. Then where are you going to build? You are going to build in an exciting domain. I will not be probably around to see the excitement happening in architecture. You are going to build in transitional areas. You are going to build in that peri-urban, semi-urban, suburban areas, which is just outside your city, just outside Mumbai, just outside Chennai, just outside Bangalore. You already know that there are transitional areas that are coming up. We call it by the next. We don't call them satellite towns, but that is where the space between the rural areas and the urban areas where you are going to build. That is the transitional area where you'll have plenty of genuinity, plenty of creative spaces to build on. You are going to build with new materials, new technologies, and things like that. And COVID times, what does it bring you? It should bring you a lot of creativity. Only through creativity. I'm telling you with my own experience. People ask me, why I am so successful. I'm telling you, and let me share this personal experience with you. When I graduated, after I took my master's, I wanted to do only sustainable architecture. Now, I come from a middle class family and from my family, and I need money, to survive. People are coming to me asking for, other kind of buildings, theaters, commercial, using conventional technology. I said, no, technology is very important to me. Unless you agree to have me as your architect, and you usually give me a promise that you'll usually sustainable technologies, then I'm not going to be an architect. I used to tell them. I used to remember Nietzsche, the German philosopher Nietzsche, who said, there's an infinity between 1 and 0. There is also an infinity between. I worked that distance. Initially, to fend for myself, I had to work as a mason. A British qualified architect like me had to work as a mason, because that actually gave me some very critical inputs into my knowledge domain. When you hold a material, when you do it with your own hands, you feel how creative you can be. Is one of the usage of the material. I used to, do all these brick buildings, mud buildings all my life, earth buildings, bamboo buildings. I'm very sure about the technology. I work with my own hands. And, that makes a difference. That really makes it. That makes you understand about the engineering properties of the material, about the moldability, ductability, restability. If you can test the material, it will really reveal the engineering properties of the material. That particular hands-on training component is missing in our engineering colleges, and that gave me very, very strong value-added points to my own career, my domain. So what I'm trying to tell you is this, COVID times are going to open up a plethora of opportunities. And where are these opportunities going to come? These are going to come in sustainable building sector. Not only sustainable building sector, even if you're going to build a bridge or get into a road construction, you should be knowing the green guidelines. Indian Roads Congress, for instance, when you look at the manual very clearly, even in road construction, we have all kinds of civil engineering construction. All kinds of civil engineering input that is, it should have a green content. The world demands that. Now, you see, every building has to be rated. Government will come down on that very soon, All the public buildings, even the private building, forget about the public, even the private buildings that's going to be a bread and butter for most of the people who are, listening to me. Even that is going to be, energy audits are going to happen. Rainwater harvesting has become mandatory in many states. Usage of wood has been banned in many states. So green protocols are beginning to come. It is going to be mandatory. It's going to be a part of the building bylaw. I'm telling you, it is going to be a part of building bylaw. In Kerala, what you have done is, let me also share that with you. We have added incentives, we have added incentives for green buildings. You don't have to pay that kind of a building tax. If my roof is filler slab, if my wall is interlocking mud bricks, I better this thing for that. So, this. I don't want to go on further because the time is getting limited. But there are design parameters, respect the site, talk to people, educate them. Probably you have to educate them about what sustainability will mean. When you're introducing LED light, or when you're introducing a brand of cement like Ramco, if you're actually suggesting that this particular cement has to be used for building construction, please tell the end user that why you're using Ramco is because of the concerns the company has for the greenness of the project, the efforts that you are actually going through. They're actually Ramco. I don't want to pin it onto a brand, but several cement companies are now actually trying, their research and development wings around, trying to make the whole process eco-sensitive and energy efficient. Even the vertical kilns, the clingers, the rest of it. I mean, I was pleasantly surprised when I heard about the qualities of blended cement, where you have some greenness put in. So this is the way you should educate the clients. And once they are educated, once you know about it, then they will be happy. This is the way, this is the service an architect, a profession can give to the people. Before I end, let me also tell you this. The parameters, I was talking about the parameters, I left that domain and went elsewhere. Insulation is going to be extremely important. Locally available materials are going to be very important. Local capabilities are going to be very, local is the issue. It was Mahatma Gandhi, the father of the nation, who said, if you're talking about Swaraj, if you're talking about economic independence, if you're talking about even political independence, because everything, infrastructure is a part of our political domain. It has to be built with local resources. I mean, he said the building will have to be built with resources that are available within 5 kilometers radius of the proposed site. Great importance, great importance. I also had I started with my Sri Lankan experience. I built the largest rehabilitation effort that has happened in India. Let me tell you that with such pride and pleasure. You have heard of Narmada, you have heard of Narmada Andolan happening, Tehri Dam, where there are public hesitations because we're trying to evacuate people. I also evacuated people, but that evacuation was very meaningful. It was painless and meaningful. And that is what sustainability is all about. How can you have a sustainable rehabilitation? Something which I'll take only 2 more minutes to dwell on that, and I'll come off that. I had the great opportunity to build something in a place near Singrauli. Singrauli, as you know, is the coal capital. Not only coal, a lot of minerals are there, and kind of, I would call it as economic capital of India. An unknown district in Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh border. And I had the great privilege of doing this rehabilitation work with the invitation of a great lady. I don't want to name that lady, but that lady once, when I was sleeping, she came on the line and she wanted to take up a project. Because all the other big players had failed, including big names. I don't want to, all the big industrial houses, they have their interest in Singrauli. And they all were talking about evacuation of few Adivasi families, and they all failed. And this lady told me that, Shankar, you are the person who to do it. Please do it meaningfully without any pain to the people who are going to evacuate it. I had the great privilege of going to this thing. The collector, it was very strange. Collector said, I can guarantee your well-being because there's a lot of problems, that area, law and order issues are there. Adivasis can, use bows and arrows to kill you. So don't go there. It's a very vulnerable area. I said, no, I've been working with these kind of situations all my life. And I don't mind. And like I told you before, I went to the community. I saw how they are living. I went to first house that I went in, then a tribal driver who took me to this mountain. First house where I went in, there was an old man, tribal man, and an animal, Janwar, got sleeping together. An animal and a man sleeping together. I'm telling you, they were sleeping away to glory, and they were snoring away to glory. A man and an animal, charpa, the wooden coat there. I was surprised. What is happening? And the tribal driver said, this is the custom here, this lifestyle, the animals have a room. I took that message, I went back, and, I want to talk to the community, gun throating, Naxal, they were all there to manage the show. And I couldn't speak. I could speak only broken Hindi. But I went with a whole model, and I went with a lot of things to tell the community before I last on the project. The community, Hindi, thousands of them sitting on the floor, and I said, you have nahane ka jagah hai, you have sone ka jagah hai. It's like very limited Hindi vocabulary. I could manage it. Then one person said, hamara janwaron ke liye jagah kahan hai? In such hoarse voice, hamara janwar. I said, yahan hai. And I showed a room where a cow and a calf were sleeping. Small models, cow and a calf. And that moment was my magic moment. I went out with 15,000 houses, local markets, schools. I went out I gave them some sustainable inputs. Water scarce area. I actually gave them a lake which was measuring more than 7 acres, 15,000 families. I gave them a lake, not a water source, a lake which was measuring more than 7 acres in that mountain. I looked at everything possible. I used all local materials, local expertise. I took these things, inputs, and it became a very happy exercise. This is what greenness is all about. I mean, everything that you should be people-centric. That's my end of it. It should be people-centric. You should touch this thing. Because, the world, we need to preserve it. We have to conserve everything. Resource efficiency, including resource efficiency. Whatever you can reuse, wherever you can reduce consumption, that should be the way out. This earth has been handed over to us by our forefathers. That's such concerns for you and the Mother Earth. And the next generation should imbibe that spirit. When you build something, build it responsibly. Build it morally right. Build it morally right. Build it on truthfulness and honesty. Build it with values built in that. Don't say lies. And whatever you can do with your limited engineering knowledge, tell them the ways out to reduce energy, to make it as eco-sensitive as possible. Look at everything, walling system, roofing system. Exciting things are coming. Prefabrication, for instance, ferro cement, for instance, roofing panels, for instance, roofing channels, for instance. I mean, a lot of things are going to come in, and probably that's going to be the future directions. With these words, probably I will stop now, and I will keep the floor open for a few more questions, because I think we have another 10 to 12 minutes to go, and I will leave the floor open for people who want to ask me questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. In fact, you had given a wonderful talk right from your heart, without any PowerPoint presentation, and which has come truly from your experience. It was indeed a very eye-opener for all of us, because the way you took up the subject, like how do we actually sit with the clients, with the people who got to own the houses, how to understand the way they are living. I mean, that is the kind of people-centric, that you're talking about is really very interesting, because that is a very new aspect, rather than just going scientifically. Understanding that is something very, and the other thing is that you talked about was the link between poverty, development, and being eco-friendly is something, environment is something of very interesting. How do we maintain that balance is something, that all of us should strive for, especially civil engineers, architects, and all that. And the construction professionals as a whole, if they are able to work together, the consultant, the client, and all the stakeholders, that's a very valid point. And one more point that you talked about was, how do we actually take the landscape, rather than disturbing it? How do we go along with the landscape? That is really interesting. And with your experience of having, your experience in rehabilitation of so many housing complexes, especially abroad and within India also, like 95,000 houses is simply unbelievable. And the way you have gone into the details is simply, something that we all would be inspired. So that was Padma Shri Dr. Shankar Saab talking to all of us. In fact, one of the questions, we can go to the question answer session, sir, for the next 10 minutes, if it's okay with you.
Yeah.
One question that is being asked is, what is the difference between green building and sustainable building?
Who is the person? Where is he from?
This is from Mr. Naveen Kumar. The place is not there. Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Naveen, thank you for the question. People have been asking me about this difference between green building and sustainable building. Is one and the same? Is it one and the same? Let me tell you, the green buildings are sustainable building, and sustainable buildings are green building. When you talk about that, I mean, there are a few qualifications that I want you to remember. The usage of, right from the design part of it, how you can make green design is very important. How to look at it starts from site management, land management, material management, labor management, things like. It's not about the technologies alone. It touches all domains of habitat, the house, the infrastructure that you're making. Right from site to the land, to the design paradigm, you should ask this question. Let me tell you this. This is a very simple way of doing this. Ask this question that actually it was my mentor, Laurie Baker, used to help me in that. He usually asked this question before he started any conversation. Ask this question, whether this is necessary. Ask this question to the client, potential client, whether this is necessary. If it's not necessary, let us not do it. First step in green design. If it's not necessary, let us also try to segregate the dreams. You should cut a clear-cut distinction between the needs and the greed. Some of the things can remain. You initially address the needs. A house can grow after some time. The concept of incremental housing is extremely critical in the times now. Extremely critical. That's a green intervention. Build small houses. Small houses are more beautiful. I'm telling you, more manageable, more beautiful. And when you look at the economic point of view, it's not a good investment. The bankers, the people, financial analysts, they will tell you that it's not a good investment. So you need comfort. You need, it should be designed as a kingdom of happiness. A small little thing can give you a kingdom of happiness. And basically, let me come back to the basic point. All the green concerns, it should include not only the materials and technologies, it should include your attitude, your perceptions, and the rest of it. Thank you very much for the question.
That is a very nice input that you have put in. Happiness into the way we stay and all. Another question from Samal Rajkumar is, how should we convince people or client for sustainable building? That has become a challenge because
absolutely. I see after 30 and odd years of professional practice, every day people come to me asking about the strength of the building, life of the building, and the rest of it. These are two questions that everybody will have. Whether it will be strong enough, whether, but that is one question, whether these buildings will be strong enough, whether it will last. These are life of the building and the strength of the building, durability of the building. These are the basic questions that people are going to ask you. Let me tell you, it's such conviction that all the technologies that we have been talking about, including earth building, they have been scientifically validated. We have tested the compressive strength of such materials. You see, usually, let me come to just one static. The compressive strength of normal burn bricks that we get on the market is around 25 kilos per centimeter square, 30 kilos per centimeter. That is all. That is the standard compressive strength that we get for the normal brick on this thing. Our bricks, interlocking mud bricks, earth bricks, stabilized mud bricks, we gave us compressive strength of more than 40 kilograms per centimeter square. So where is the question? You should reel out the statistics to the helpless client sitting in front of you. Tell them that by doing this, you're saving money. This is very critical. Don't propagate expensive technologies. There are many expensive technologies. But when you talk about a technology, you should be convinced about three things: cost efficiency, eco-sensitivity. Tell them that these buildings are going to be more comfortable, less hurt on your pocket, going to be energy efficient. Your electricity bills will, eventually when you look at the bills, you'll feel happy about it. Say that it will be a cooler house, I'm telling you, this is what I use as my USPs, unique selling points, as my USP. If you want my house, I'm giving you a promise. That will be a cooler house. These are things that normal people will take. Tell them that you're losing options. Nature, if you want to sustain the nation, you need to build sustainable houses. You don't build, tell them and take them into one of the houses that you're building. Tell them that, look, this is a house that I've built. Look at the technology. Look at this thing. Anybody, my own office building where I'm sitting and talking to you, it's a 6-storied mud building. 6-storied mud building. And people come here, they wanted to ask me whether my 2-storied building can be built with mud. I said, look at this office building. This is 6-storied. This is built within this thing. And then there are no questions, This is, your buildings are going to be your answers. So build 1 or 2 buildings responsibly using this kind of technology. Tell them the end beneficiary is going to be you. You. Monetarily, you will benefit. And I think that's going to seal the question. Yeah. Thank you.
And the last question, sir, from Mrs. Soumya. What kind of role should a structural engineer must play to design green building? What do you think should be the role of a structural engineer? She's talking about integration. of the various stakeholders. I think.
You know, your building should be strong enough. I'm not denying this thing of structural engineering at all. The integration is very critical. It's very important, very critical. You should ensure people ask me about, I use a particular kind of a roofing called the filler slab, using, third grade tiles as a filler material, broken tiles as a filler material. People ask me, then I tell them that it's about compression, it's about tension. Tension gets taken by the steel, compression gets taken by the top zone, which is above the neutral axis, and all the usage of concrete in the lower zone is just to embed the steel rods in such a way that it doesn't get corroded, exposed to atmospheric air. And then what are the benefits? You use only 35 to 40 kilograms per 100 square feet. It's a great saving. When you look at the normal this thing, you're talking about 100 kilos for 100 square feet of concrete area. I'm using only 45 kilos. 45 kilos, Astrom, validated by CERC, all these structural engineering research institutes, they've validated it. So, I mean, this is a very critical thing. This is the question that you're going to face all your life. You have to integrate it. You should have a very strong knowledge about the structures. You should have a strong knowledge about the structural properties of the material. And if you have that, then your life is made. Before you conclude, let me tell you this.
There are two more questions. Would you be ready to take it? Or?
I'm ready to answer, yeah.
Okay. Sir, one question is, very valid in the today's scenario. Like in a place like Dharavi, Bombay, where social distancing is unavoidable, what role can architects and engineers play to better the unhygienic living conditions there? Is there any role that we can play?
This is quite interesting and to me very personal. I'm taking it as a personal question to me because, I've been trying to redesign Dharavi. We talk about low density development for a long time now. I've been working with organizations like Spark, who works with slum dwellers in Mumbai, Dharavi. I've been a huge follower of Dharavi slums for a long time now. Now, there are many exciting ways of looking at it. I mean, we are all talking about highly dense, you're talking about density of population all the time. You're talking about limited area. I'm telling you, it's conviction as an architect and an urban planner that within that area, you can have low-rise building units that can actually, you give me any numbers. I know the population of Dharavi. 10 years back when I started designing it, the numbers were there. I also projected it, 20% more people coming in to live there. With all the community facilities, spaces around, and a place where they can extend the building, incremental housing. We have designed that, but unfortunately, this was not taken forward. Social distancing is very important. A place to grow is very important. A place for children to play is very important, especially in these kind of areas. And that is why you see heaps of, you need a sociological understanding of philosophy more than the technology if you are dealing with such things. You have a very clear understanding of the urban design potential. You should know the way if you are giving 18-story building and a lifts which are not going to work, they're very sensitive machines. And what the hell are you talking about? This is what's happening in Dharavi. I'm telling you, but you need a lot of will. I don't want to go on because you're talking about political will and the rest of it. But I'm telling you with such conviction that in even COVID times, I'm looking at the crowd. I know about the crowd. Very beautiful spaces where people don't have to crowd themselves can be built within the strict land barriers. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. In fact, one more last question can we have?
Yeah, you can.
This, I think we will wind up with this last question. The one question about carbon footprint, what are your views on that? If you can touch upon that briefly.
Carbon footprint is very critical in this world because, when you are talking about carbon dioxide emissions, when you are talking about ozone depletion, it is very important that we go for a neutral this thing. Carbon neutral is the word. And all the technologies, this is going to be one of the main parameters when you talk technologies, when you talk about the usage of materials. you have to take that in this thing. There's going to be a major criterion in the days to come. And in the Western world, they are giving credits for using this neutral strategies. And that is going to be the order of the day, the days to come. Thank you very much for that final question. Before I wind up, I should thank a few people who made this happen. Right from Dr. Anil Kumar Pillai, who is moderating this session, to Karthikeyan, to Kevin, who is actually looking after the South Kerala operation, and my young dear friend from Trivandrum, Sarah, who made this happen. Because, I mean, you have to do that before I can. Thank you very much, Ramco, for giving this opportunity. I hope it has reached many people. And yes, any questions, probably you can share my email to them. And I'll be only happy to hold hands with people who want to take this forward, this concern forward. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. And before we sign off, let me also thank you once again for sparing your time. In fact, we at Ramco also have been promoting these green practices in the area of cement through the usage of blended cement, as you rightly said, where embodied energy is lesser, looking at the heat of hydration, looking at the durability perspective, looking at how economically we can design the concrete mix proportion, which is a critical area. So as you rightly said, lot of investment we have made in research and development. In fact, we are one of the very few cement companies who are having a separate R&D center, which is based out of Chennai, and where we actually work with the client to look at how we can economize this concrete mix design in terms of cement content, so that that is very important from a green perspective. So we are doing that service to many of our customers. We have a database of concrete mix designs of various grades of concrete. We leave it to the structural engineer, but what we do is that we work with them to see where they can economically make some kind of this thing, because when you said cost efficiency is one of the major parameters, we are looking at designing from the optimal perspective. And from the manufacturing perspective, as you know, we have won the 4 Leaves Award for being leadership in technology, energy efficiency, and for the usage of blending materials. So with those few words, let me also say that there is more number of webinars till May 17th. We have already scheduled the programs, and there is going to be a conference also 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th in the area of geotechnique, in the area of soil and rocks, so that we further integrate the entire field of civil engineering. So we have that. And tomorrow also we have one by Dr. Suvai from West Bengal, from Kolkata. In fact, we have a range of speakers from from East India, from Kerala, from Tamil Nadu, and it was indeed a pleasure to be with you, sir. Padma Shri Dr. Shankar sir, for having shared his insights, and we would also make available the recording to some of them who could not make it because they were busy with their work of opening up and all that. We would definitely ensure that your insights reach a greater number of construction professionals, because it was indeed a very insightful approach from your side. The people-centric aspect of architectural this thing is something that has touched us, and we thank you, sir. So we take leave of you, and thank you so much.